So I've been a resident of Elk Grove for 22 years, married to my wife, Christina, and we're raising our 3 children here in Elk Grove. And,
How many children?
Sure, yeah, 3 children. Let's see, Abby is 17, Haley is 14, Travis is 12. My wife and I have been married for 21 years. She's a 3rd generation Elk Grovian. And I'll tell you, without their support, it may sound cliche, but this is the truth. Without their support, I wouldn't be here. That means the missing of sporting events, of classroom activities, of holidays. They're forgiving, they're understanding, they're encouraging, and that's not just my family. You'll find that across the board, that those of us in this profession are here in large part because of the support of our family. And I'm honored and humbled to serve in a community that I call home, that I've called home, and that I will continue to call home. So my first 12 years were spent with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, where I worked in the jail facility, in the courts, in patrol, became a training officer, worked in K-9, which was an incredibly rewarding experience, and then promoted. And when you're promoted to Sheriff's Department, you go back to a custody facility or back to jail. And so, so after spending some time as a sergeant in the jail, I made it back to the streets, and then came here to Elk Grove to serve as a contract employee. So I was working for the Sheriff's Department, but serving in the capacity of patrol sergeant for the city of Elk Grove. They were under contract with the county Sheriff's Department then. And in probably late 2004, early 2005, I was provided an opportunity by then Chief Bob Simmons to come to the Elk Grove Police Department for good, as they were forming their own police department. And one of the most difficult professional decisions I ever had to make. But as I look back, certainly one of the best decisions I ever did make. And so I came here, I had the opportunity to put together our K-9 program from scratch, and then work in gangs and narcotics, eventually promoting to the rank of lieutenant, where I was a watch commander, overseeing the patrol operations in our professional standards unit, where you do internal affairs, but the best part being recruiting and training and really developing those relationships with prospective employees. And then promoted to captain, where I served in both our investigative bureau as well as our patrol bureau, and was promoted from that position to where I am today.
How long had you been doing that?
So I've been with Elk Grove for, going on 14 years now. So my first 12 or so with the Sheriff's Department, and the last 14 here at Elk Grove.
And you were a captain for how long?
I was a captain for, I'm not sure why I'm looking at you. I was a captain for about 3.5 years.
What do you think is the biggest challenge the department faces?
Wow. I'll tell you, we have done a really good job, most recently, at embracing technology. But as you know, technology advances by the moment. And in fact, as we sit here, technology has advanced. I think our biggest challenge is, maybe not our biggest challenge, but one of our challenges is leveraging technology to better serve our community, to provide for a higher level of safety for our community members, a higher level of safety for the officers who serve, and to really be able to provide an environment where our people can thrive and bring calls to closure. But something we've done really well, and I wouldn't say it's a challenge for us, although I'd like it to continue, is reaching those groups within our community that otherwise we've never reached. A good example is our special needs community here in Elk Grove. We hadn't done a great job, to be perfectly honest, in reaching that group. To understand the special needs community, for the special needs community to understand perhaps what our role is in providing safety for them. And we took it upon ourselves to do just that over the last several years. And I'll tell you, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience as it relates to our relationship with that diverse segment of our community, with the families, and it exposed our officers to that group that otherwise they might not have known, whether it was somebody that was autistic and maybe was displaying characteristics that otherwise we wouldn't be able to notice on calls for service, for mental health, those various things that are involved that we perhaps didn't have a great understanding, that allowed for us to bridge the gap with that particular group. And as a further challenge to us as an organization, I don't think there's certainly more groups that we have yet to reach to better understand their perspectives, for them to gain some confidence in our role, and really to develop that friendship, that understanding to bridge the gap that might exist.
Are you bringing any changes to be able to reach that goal?
Sure. I like to encourage an entrepreneurial approach. We oftentimes just continue to head down a path because that's the path that's been laid. I would encourage staff to be entrepreneurial, to think outside the box. The special needs approach, for example, that was born from one of our officers who was passionate about that and saw a need and demonstrated that need. And I'm so glad that we took that leap. Otherwise, to encourage our staff to be entrepreneurial, to find ways to do this job better, to connect more genuinely. So it's one of my initiatives is to provide that license, if you will, for our employees at all levels of the organization to be entrepreneurial, to be innovative, and do something to bridge the gap with parts of the community that otherwise we haven't bridged.
Speaking about community, Governor Newsom recently signed into law one of the nation's toughest standards for the use of deadly force. We know that unions were initially against it because they were saying this could put an officer's life at risk. How do you see this bill now, and what is going to be done differently with your department?
Sure. We're absolutely focused on relationships in our community, and I think when you are focused on those relationships, the ability to understand the various approaches is defined clearly and is made stronger. How we train has been consistent and will remain consistent. That is the sanctity of life. That we would continue to broadcast that not only internal to our organization but externally. That sanctity of life is precious, and to understand that concept is absolutely paramount. We have a professional organization. We have professional staff who daily set out to do good. And we enjoy a really, really positive relationship with our community, but that's precious. And that's not something that we take for granted. That's something that we invest in on a daily basis. That's something that we value, and we work to continue to not only maintain, but I would say even improve and get it to even a better place. So as it relates to this use of force bill, our ability to continue to be professional, our ability to have interactions that are professional, and that we would demonstrate empathy, that we would be sympathetic, that we would engage in interactions that are productive, and really comes down to explaining why sometimes, why we're doing what we're doing. And oftentimes I think that's lost on us as a society, and that's no different than in organizations. That if we explain the reason in which we're doing things, then people get to understand a little deeper as to the why behind actions.
Will there be any training for officers to understand that explaining is needed? Or
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I think we do a pretty aggressive job in broadcasting the need for that. The need to give people a voice, if you will, to hear them and hear what their perspectives are. We often, maybe not often, but we sometimes take for granted that people understand why we're doing what we're doing. When in fact, if we spent just a little bit more time explaining why we're doing what we're doing, then at least there's a basis for somebody to form an opinion, and perhaps an opportunity for us to demystify what we're doing, and in doing so, maybe build or foster a relationship. So our training is focused on that personal aspect, that human involvement, the ability to have conversations that are meaningful, that ability to explain the why. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty spoiled that we have a staff that's, they do an incredible job with that, and I get to hear about that on a daily basis. I wish people had an opportunity to see, even as a captain, what I saw, and even in this few days in this role, to see the community support, and it's a pretty numbing experience.
how do you see transparency, sir? And I don't even know, do you guys have the cameras? Does the department use the cameras?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is, I mean, that's paramount to trust, right? Without transparency, we don't have trust. You know, we're equipped with body-worn cameras. We have in-car cameras. You know, we you know, capture those moments of interaction through those mediums, and not to simply just to have, right, but to have the ability to critique our performance, to be able to maybe provide context to contacts. So it's a way for us and in our staff to get a good feel as to how we've done things. I mean, I've worn the cameras when in uniform, and you know, to go back and look at an interaction that you've had with somebody gives you the chance to, you know, from that step away perspective, to see how the interaction went. Was your message received? Was it delivered in the way that you hoped it would be delivered? So I think it allows not only for the transparency for our community to know that we have those, but for ourselves to self-critique our approach to those situations that we find ourselves in.
What are some of the most important tasks on your agenda for the department?
Well, you know, we talked about looking for opportunities to bridge with, you know, segments of our community that perhaps we haven't bridged or haven't bridged enough with. That's big, because I think through those conversations we learn about the needs of our community. And at the end of the day, we're here to serve our community, and so those relationships are where it starts. And so, you know, to double down on our outreach to those communities, to give staff that license to be entrepreneurial, to find new and novel ways. Somebody just introduced, instead of coffee with a cop, which occurs usually at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, a cone with a cop, where we would have an ice cream cone, you know, at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night when kids are out of school, when families are home from their work and school schedules, that we would have another opportunity to connect. Those don't happen by accident. They happen from people who have an idea. But unfortunately, sometimes in organizations, we limit ideas to decision makers. I want to change that. I want those ideas to bubble up from the bottom, because by and large, that's where good ideas happen, and our experience has demonstrated that time and time again. You know, we are, as I told you, leveraging technology. And we just recently launched our unmanned aircraft system, which is, you know, an opportunity for us to make our communities and officers safer by providing that eye in the sky. And we also have our real-time information center that we just recently launched that is a great funnel of data that makes for the investigating of crimes that are occurring, crimes that have occurred, and projecting perhaps larger scale events with a higher degree of efficiency and accuracy. And that technology piece is, as it continually evolves, that real-time information center will allow us to keep up at a good rate.
What would your message be to the residents of Elk Grove?
Gosh, I guess I'd want to communicate our thanks for the relationship we have, the thanks for supporting this organization. If I could tell you a quick story, and that is recently we had a procession that came through town for Tara Earl Sullivan. And what I heard from the family of Tara, what I heard from our peers at Sacramento Police Department, is that when they came through this town, Elk Grove showed up. And they were out there in the morning, and they were out there late in the evening to provide their support for the families and for the officers and for each other. And that was a moving moment for not just us here within the Elk Grove Police Department, but for law enforcement in general. And I heard so many comments about how lucky we must be to have a community that supports us the way that they do. And they're absolutely right. We're very fortunate, and we don't take that for granted. And our desire is to continue to build on that relationship. So I would just thank our community for the support, and ask them to allow us to continue to build on that.
Any advice from Police Chief Albright that he passed down to you?
Gosh, yeah, sure. He, you know, Chief Noblet was he was my mentor. He was my coach. He developed me over the last 10 years. He taught me about humility. He taught me about leadership, real leadership. He taught me about professionalism. That man had a significant impact on the trajectory of my career, but more importantly on how to do things, how to lead from the heart. And he's going to be sorely missed. I was with him on Friday when he literally turned the lights to his office off and walked out the door. And that was a moving experience for me, because that man has been at the center of my development for 10 years. I did make sure before he left that he kept the same phone number, so I have him on speed dial. But he put together some very progressive things within this organization, and really connected well with our community. And as I take the baton from Chief Noblet, I'm not only going to pay homage to him and what he did, but I want to carry that even further, because to do anything different would be upsetting to him and wouldn't pay homage. And so my desire, through dedicated staff who are well thought, well positioned, and desiring of greater things, to do just that, to take this to the next level, and to continue to connect genuinely with the incredible members of our community. But there were certainly some challenges in growing up. But as it relates to mentoring youth, one of the things I love to do is teach. So I've been a adjunct faculty at California State University, Sacramento for the past 7 years, teaching in their graduate and undergraduate program. And to be in a classroom and see the orientation of this next generation it's a rewarding thing. We oftentimes hear about this next generation, right? And it's usually followed with some negative. And we could certainly do that, but I would argue that that's cyclical, right? That they said the same thing about my generation, the same about the generation before. This next generation is, they have their challenges just by virtue of, people's thought. But there are some well-oriented and motivated people who are a part of this generation or next generation. And to have the opportunity to see them in the classroom and to see their thoughts and their orientation and their ability to be situationally aware to those things that are going on in society, our future is bright. And I take every opportunity to meet with youth, because not everybody has the perfect background. Not everybody has been provided the perfect setup for their career. And my ability to understand that and do what I can to encourage, perhaps demystify what their path might look like, I take every opportunity to do that.
I guess it's like we always say, your background doesn't define you. It seems like you would be a good example for that.
Sure, I could tell you that if you, as any of my friends from high school, junior high school might see this, they might think, is that the Tim Albright that I knew? And because I wasn't necessarily on the right path, and I didn't always make good choices. And I think that's the message, right? That we don't always have to come from this perfect mold to be successful. But what we do have to be is honest with ourselves. And we do have to find people that care about us and want to mentor and develop. And somebody has to believe in you to get you to that place, to have you recognize that you were meant for more than perhaps what you have defined. And so any role, however small, I can play in that's success for me.
One day when you retire yourself, how do you want your department to remember you?
Yeah, wow. We often talk about legacy and what you leave behind. If I could create even more people who understand the absolute importance of connecting with the community, who value not just the connection, but value their role in that connection. If that's all my legacy is to get one more person to understand that, then I've done okay. But my goal would be to get people to not just do it because the boss says, not just do it because our mission or our vision or our values say do it, but to do it because you recognize and feel that the importance of that connection. And so it's my goal through my tenure here to get people to understand that. And you get them to understand that not by, shoving policy in front of them. It's not by, making them feel silly about their lack of orientation. It's by demonstrating it. And it's by them coming to realize the importance of what that looks like. Because it's incredibly gratifying.